Okay, let me explain. In the Pokemon TCG, in order to win, you have to take all of your prize cards by usually taking knockouts on your opponent's Pokemon. However, certain cards will knock themselves out, giving your opponent that prize card in order to use some kind of effect. You would think that that kind of cost is just so heavy that it dooms those cards to being completely unusable, but in practice, there have been a lot of really good or downright broken cards that have had this kind of stipulation on them, so I want to talk about those today. Anyway, this took a lot of research, a lot of editing, everything. There's a lot of work that was put into this, so if you're watching the video, please just like, comment, subscribe, do all that, so it would help me out a ton. Also, to be clear, I'm only going to be covering cards with Poke Powers, Pokebodies, abilities, all of that type of thing. I'm not going to count attacks that knock a Pokemon out because there are a lot of those and most of them are just really bad. So instead, we're going to be focusing on the abilities and things similar to that, since those ones tend to have a lot more of a story behind them. Now with that, it actually doesn't take very long at all to find the first instance of this effect. In fact, it's in base set, Electrode. Look, this is a pretty unique card, especially for so early in the game, so you might have seen this card before. But Electrode has a funny little Pokemon power called Bazap, which says that any time during your turn before your attack, you may knock out Electrode and attach it to one of your Pokemon. If you do, choose a type of energy. Electrode is now an energy card instead of a Pokemon that provides 2 energy of that type. You can't use this power if Electrode is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. Okay, so just reading this one is insane. Like, you could print this card today with 0 changes, it would probably see tons of play. Sure, your opponent does get that prize card, but this is double acceleration for any energy type you can think of, and this is the best kind of acceleration. This isn't just accelerating from the hand or the discard or the deck or whatever. No, this is accelerating out of nowhere. From the abyss, Electrode becomes the energy. It doesn't get much better than this. Now, obviously, a card like this would see play. Primarily saw play in a deck called Bazapdos, where you guessed it, used Bazap to charge up Zapdos. You could also pair this with like Charizard to help pay for its attack, but really Bazapdos was the only deck using Electrode and seeing success with it. Now, Bazapdos was a fine deck, don't get me wrong, but you'd expect a card like this to be everywhere. Like, let me reiterate, this effect is insane. Why weren't people playing this? Well, if you're familiar with the format, you probably know why. First major reason is energy removal. This is a trainer card from base set, which is also one of the most broken cards ever put to paper. Choose one energy card attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon and discard it. So you see the problem, right? Giving up a prize card for Electrode would be worth it, but every deck is running multiples of this card, which discards Electrode right away. With the insane amount of draw power in this format, Electrode probably won't stay attached for more than a turn before energy removal does its job. You know, speaking of energy removal, Super Energy Removal is a card from base set, which is also one of the most broken cards ever put to paper. Discard one energy card attached to one of your Pokemon in order to choose one of your opponent's Pokemon and up to 2 energy cards attached to it and discard those energy cards. So basically energy removal, but again, this is a format with 0 supporters, just unlimited, unrestricted draw power, and give 8 copies of this trainer card that just removes energy. Now, the other major issue here is Voltorb. Voltorb only has 40 HP, and it has a weakness to fighting. The best attacker in this format is Hitmonchan, who for 1 fighting energy does 20 damage. Consider that Gust of Wind is also a card, which is once again one of the most broken cards ever put to paper, that just gusts up anything you want whenever you want it. So your opponent can just play Hitmonchan, attach that energy, and then they can gust up and Oko your Voltorbs. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into this. You need to probably get multiple Voltorbs out so they don't all go down immediately. Evolve 1 into Electrode. Probably use a card like Last to empty out your opponent's item cards, and then from there you have to hope your opponent doesn't draw into a Professor Oak or Bill or whatever, and then from there go into their energy removal and just ruin your life. It's a lot of work. Still, this card isn't bad. It's more so just a victim of its circumstances. You know, this is still, at least on paper, a very strong card. I don't know. Personally, I like this card a lot. That said, it would kind of be a while before we got our next Pokemon with an effect like this. And the card that actually brings this effect back is Electrode. Again, well, we love to see this. Electrode has come back with a vengeance. It's an EX now, meaning your opponent will get 2 prize cards from the self-destruction. So let's hope this is worth it. Electrode EX's Poke Power is Extra Energy Bomb. Once during your turn before your attack, you may discard Electrode EX and all the cards attached to it, which counts as knocking out Electrode. And if you do, search your discard pile for 5 energy cards and attach them to any of your Pokemon, excluding Pokemon EX in any way you like. This power can't be used if Electrode EX is affected by a special condition. So this card is broken. The stuff that was holding the old Electrode back, like energy removal, isn't around anymore, and even if it was, this gets 5 energy. It also doesn't discriminate at all from special energy cards, so you can imagine this card saw a ton of usage in quite a few different decks. So here's a fun one, Zapdos. Zapdos has also returned with a shiny new EX, and the two combined to give us another deck with a fun name. Alexander Ferrugia piloted this deck to a first place finish at the 2005 Malta National Championships. Zapdos EX, when put into play, could move itself into the active and attach attach any number of lightning energy on your board to itself, which served as a pretty convenient workaround to the fact that Electrode normally can't attach to those EXs. It can then use Electron Crush to swing for 70 damage as soon as turn 2. This doesn't seem like much now, but this was a huge number to hit for on turn 2 back then. You'd one-shot nearly everything that wasn't a stage 2 or an EX, and you probably were two-shotting everything else. We also have Manectric, whose Magnetic Tackle does 40 damage plus 10 more for each lightning attached to it. That's going to be a minimum of 70 damage in this deck, but you can certainly hit much higher numbers here. Better yet, both Voltorb and Electrike have a recharge to their attack, allowing for further acceleration. Finally, you have the supporter card Rocket's Admin. This makes both players shuffle their hands into their deck and draw cards equal to their remaining prize cards. So you use Electrode, then use this, and immediately destroy your opponent's hand. That combo specifically was very common in Electrode decks. Another heavy hitter making use of Electrode was called ZRE. ZRE stands for Zapdos Rayquaza Electrode, and saw some impressive placements in the 2005 season, including 9th place in the Masters Division of Worlds, and top 4 in the Seniors Division. The same Zapdos as before, but this is the Rayquaza from EX Deoxys, whose Pokepower moves energy to itself when put into play. Spyro Blast does 20 damage for each energy attached to Rayquaza, so that's 100 off in Electrode alone. You could also charge up Rayquaza Star as an emergency nuke for anything on the board, and finally POW, Hand Extension, disrupts the opponent's board if you're behind on prizes, which Electrode of course sets up for you. There were some other pretty funny applications for this card. Exeggutor's big explosion attack, flip a bunch of coins for all the energy attached to it. You could accelerate react energy onto Machamp to power up its swift blow attack. Apparently Delcatty with Electrode got 19th place in the World Championships, but I can't find a deck list for that. One thing that's important to note is many people play this era of the game even today, so pretty much every attacker that likes having lots of energy probably has a build with Electrode out there somewhere, and there's no doubt in my mind that there's a ton of cool deck lists that I just can't mention here because there's just too many of them to keep track of. That said, by far the most infamous deck that made use of this card was Bombtar. This was Ross Cawthon's secret deck that he took into the 2005 World Championships, getting a 2nd place finish. Dark Tyranitar was already a solid card for its swiping tail attack, putting 20 damage on all of your opponent's Pokemon before using Ancient Techno Machine Rock to devolve your opponent's whole board and take big knockouts. This deck is more than capable of doing exactly that, but Electrode can allow you to accelerate powerful cards like Scramble Energy, which provides 3 of any energy when you're behind on prizes, or Darkness Energy, or Heal Energy, or even Rainbow Energy onto your Tyranitar. This meant that Tyranitar's grind attack hit gigantic numbers, or you could even use Tyranitar's Bite Off to hit 120 damage against EXs. Of course, cards like Hand Extension and Rocket Admin saw good use here as well. Going into 2006, I see claims of people saying this deck was tier 0 even. I'll be honest, from what I could find, this deck certainly put up good results, but I couldn't find the dominance that you'd expect from a tier 0 deck here. But the overall conclusion here, this is a really, really good card. Like, initially you were using this with EXs that could bypass the restriction of Electrode, but later on, people just started using special energy and just doing the most insane things imaginable. This card is so cool, it enables so much, and it's so powerful. While the previous cards that we talked about weren't really bad at all, Electrode EX here is meta-definingly powerful. This is just absurd. Good job, Electrode. Now, the good news is, it wouldn't take nearly as long for us to get to our next card, which is Beedrill. I mean, I get it. Bees die when they sting, right? Sure. Here's Beedrill from Delta Species. Look at this guy, he's hitting the Captain Falcon knee. Anyway though, we care about the ability, which is aptly named Final Sting. Once during your turn, before your attack, you may knock out Beedrill. If you do, choose one of your opponent's defending Pokemon. That Pokemon is now paralyzed and poisoned. Put 2 damage counters instead of 1 on that Pokemon between turns. This power can't be used if Beedrill is affected by a special condition. On paper, this ability is strong. Paralyzed Pokemon can't attack or retreat, so if your opponent can't remove that status, they can't attack and their Pokemon will take 40 damage from poison. But that's the first big issue. First of all, while you can follow up Beedrill with an attacker, you want to keep their active Pokemon from being knocked out so you can take advantage of that turn of paralysis. So your opponent's defending Pokemon must have enough HP to stomach your attack and at least the first 20 damage from poison. Furthermore, your opponent can just remove the status with Switch, Warp Point, Super Scoop Up, or just by evolving. And a lot of the trainers I mentioned weren't actually used in every deck, so maybe there were times in which this would stick for a turn and you get that free turn, but other times you would use this ability and it would barely have an impact. It's just kind of awkward and difficult to use. That said, this card does have results. I found one placement with this card. A deck piloted by Tommy Wynn to a 2nd place finish at the Seniors Division of the 2007 Southern California Regionals used Beedrill's ability to do some pretty cool things. You'd give your opponent a prize card, which would allow Rayquaza EX's Rage Aura ability to activate, and from there you could use Special Circuit to hit at the opponent's bench, keeping your opponent paralyzed Pokemon trapped in the active. The deck would also play Houndoom, which would shut your opponent out of trainer cards if you had less Pokemon to play than them. So not only would Beedrill remove itself from the field, helping fulfill that condition, but also this means that the paralysis is more likely to stick. They can't use Switch to get out of it. So it's a really cool combo, and it's a bit of a shame I can't find the exact deck list that was used here, but it's good to know that at least someone found out how to make this card work. Now then, unfortunately, the rest of the Advanced era and the Diamond and Pearl era wouldn't see any more of these cards, but instead we'd have to wait until the Heartgold Soulsilver era, in which Electrode would finally make its triumphant return. This is Electrode Prime from Triumphant. Its Pokepower Energy Might says once during your turn before your attack, you may use this power. If you do, Electrode is knocked out. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose as many energy cards as you like and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like, discard the other cards. This definitely isn't Electrode EX, I can tell you that much. This card really didn't see nearly the amount of success that Electrode EX saw. From what I could tell, this was an off-meta pick at best. When doing research, I found a few blogs that were honestly just trashing the card. I almost thought this thing was just downright bad. But it was actually somewhat popular early on. It was partnered with Magnezone Prime to get a bunch of energy on the board to send to the Lost Zone. Plus, being behind on prizes let you use Twins to search any 2 cards from your deck. That's pretty good. However, Emboar would eventually come around and let you get energy on the board far more easily, and would ultimately be the card paired with Magnezone to allow David Cohen to win the 2011 World Championships. Some people messed with this card in tandem with Conkeldurr from Noble Victories, but I couldn't find any real results for the deck like that. It did see success in Cake decks, which stands for Cobalion, Kyurem, Electrode, and also again confirms that we still had cool deck names at least as recently as 15 years ago. Once again, we could accelerate special energy cards like Rainbow Energy or Special Metal Energy with this. We can move energy onto Kyurem to charge its Glaciate attack and spread damage on the board. Then Jirachi could devolve those Pokemon and take big knockouts. Seem familiar. Additionally, Cobalion and Terrakion simply hit what was in front of us, and again, Twins was still around at this point, getting any 2 cards if we're behind on prizes. We also had Black Belt as an option to boost our damage output. Rocket's Admin's effect was still around in the form of N, so we're seeing a number of ways to take advantage of that self-KO as well. As time went on, people started to acknowledge this card as a real card and started seeing decent success, but Cake is about as far as it really got. Electrode Prime really doesn't hold a candle to Electrode EX, but it at least served as a cool card with a unique place in the metagame, so it's hard to ask for much more. Once again, we have to wait another few years to see our next card. This time it's Cofagrigus from Plasma Freeze. This card has the ability 6 feet under, which says once during your turn before your attack you may knock out this Pokemon, and if you do, put 3 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. So once again, this reads pretty solid. It can fix up numbers and allow you to take big knockouts. Giving up 1 prize to spread damage is worth it for the 2 prizes you get from KOing an EX. Speaking of EXs, Lugia EX from Plasma Storm is a great partner for this card. Its overflow ability lets it take an extra prize card when it takes a knockout. Cofagrigus could fix up the damage to let Lugia take those knockouts, offsetting the prize card it just gave out. This card could also be used in Flareon decks to place damage while simultaneously powering up Flareon's Vengeance attack. That said, the Flareon list I could find seemed to forego this card, so I imagine that Cofagrigus was mostly just an option that was dropped later on. Overall, this card is still solid. It saw mostly niche play, didn't really see widespread use, but once again, like the cards before, it actually did something. It put up some results, people were experimenting with it, so it once again wouldn't really be fair to say anything super negative. But this is where things get a little bit weird. We're entering the XY era now, and this Milotic is kind of a strange one. Milotic's ability, Energy Grace, says once during your turn, before your attack, you may knock out this Pokemon. If you do, attach 3 basic energy cards from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. So first of all, I get why Electrode knocked itself out. I see the logic for Beedrill and even Cofagrigus, but Milotic? I don't know. Anyway, this card was bad initially. Being limited to basic energy meant it couldn't really get up to the shenanigans that the Electrodes could, and there weren't really any ways to get around the whole restriction of not being able to attach the EXs, at least when it came out. You see, in standard format, this card came and went without really doing anything, but expanded format also exists, and expanded allows you to use any card from Black and White onward. Sure, Milotic can't attach to big EXs, but it can attach to both Pokemon V and Pokemon GXs. There was a very specific combo in expanded, where you would start by using Milotic's ability to put 3 Psychic Energy on a Trevenant and Dusknoir tag team. Then, since you're behind on prizes, you can play Ace Trainer to put your opponent to 3 cards in their hand. Finally, attack with Night Watch to shuffle 2 more cards from your opponent's hand into the deck. With that, you've basically annihilated your opponent's entire hand. And that combo is something that you could theoretically set up as early as your second turn. So, this card might have ended up just a tiny bit broken. They ended up banning Milotic from expanded format, where it remains to this day, and I don't think it's very hard to see why a card like this would have to go. Our next card would appear in the 2016 set XY Evolutions. This one is Electrode. Again, he's back. Electrode is here once more, touting the almighty Bazap Thunder. Bazap Thunder says once during your turn, you may knock out this Pokemon to attach it to one of your Lightning Pokemon as a special energy card. This card provides 2 Lightning Energy only while this card is attached to a Pokemon. So this is a lot like base set Electrode, except now it only attaches to Lightning Pokemon and only provides 2 Lightning Energy. So it's actually way worse. Like way worse. Being restricted to Lightning just kind of kills the hype here. There just weren't any good Lightning Pokemon running around when this card was printed. Your best bets might have been Jolteon EX or Raikou from Breakthrough, and both those cards on their own are fine, right? Jolteon saw played a bunch of different decks for its Flash Ray attack, and Raikou at least saw usage in Expanded alongside Noble Victory's Electric to hit for big damage. Maybe this Electrode would be enough for Raikou to be good in Standard. Not really. I found one result. Tobias Tessin got 5th at the 2016 Dortmund Regionals with Electrode Raikou. We have a Jolteon EX here as well for good measure. This is the only result with this card I could find. Once again, giving up a prize lets us use any greater effect, but beyond that, the game plan is pretty simple. From what I could find, people were very hopeful for this card at first, but there just wasn't anything to do with it. A lot of the blogs from back then were like, wow, this card is so cool if we get a good electric attacker to combo it with. And I guess that good electric attacker just never really came around. As a result, Electrode's return ended up being kind of underwhelming this time around. Still, this is a cool card. It would also be cool if maybe we could get Electrode EX back as well. Celestial Storm is a set that pays homage to the Neo and Advanced eras of the game, breathing new life into old cards. Electrode EX was one of those cards chosen. Let's look at Electrode GX. Once during your turn before your attack, you may attach 5 energy cards from your discard pile to your Pokemon except Pokemon GX or Pokemon EX in any way you like. If you do, this Pokemon is knocked out. So this one is literally Electrode EX, but again, the exact same card, just with the restriction updated. This is really cool. Unfortunately, the game has changed since back then. Single prize attackers just aren't really viable, so it's hard to get everything you need. There were strong cards you could pair with this, things like Counter Catcher or even Beast Ring. You could use this card alongside basic Pokemon, then evolve them into GXs to get around that restriction a little bit. You could try Ultra Prism's Hippopotas, which could hit for 180 if you had 3 or less cards in deck, while Electrode would accelerate strong energy, meaning that you were hitting for definitely more than 180, and that could be pretty strong. What I'm trying to get at here is that this card was decent, it had a lot of different ways of being used, but it just wasn't something you saw very often, especially because Tag Me Pokemon would come out, and those Pokemon are extremely powerful basic GX Pokemon that not only warp the whole game around them, but also couldn't really use Electrode very much at all. Instead, Electrode would really shine over an expanded format. And this is where things get fun. Alolan Raichu from Unified Minds has the Electro Rain attack. This card has many lightning energy as you want from Raichu and do 30 damage to anywhere on your opponent's board for each energy discarded. Now, Electrode would knock itself out to accelerate energy and put you behind on prize cards. This enables reversal energy, which as long as you're behind provides 3 of any energy, and counter energy does the same thing but for only 2. And your game plan is to use Electrode ideally twice, throw a bunch of energy onto Raichu, and annihilate their entire board in one fell swoop. This is one of the funniest combos I've ever seen. There's also the Whiscash from Obsidian Flames and the Centiskorch from Sword and Shield base set, which have similar cards that instead discard the top card of your opponent's deck for each energy attached, so you could do the same combo, but instead of destroying your opponent's board, you deck them out. Now, the Raichu combo specifically managed to get second at the annual Aichi Expanded event in 2024. You could do other things here as well, like skip your opponent's turn with Dialga V-Star, but I think the Raichu combo is probably the best way to use this card. So I think we're doing pretty good here. Electrode EX was obviously really strong, but was still a cool card that made the game interesting. Milotic wasn't really future-proof, but besides that it was fine. All the other cards here haven't really been too overpowered. In fact, most of them have been kind of underwhelming. Surely we can keep up this trend of unique, powerful, yet relatively balanced. Oh, this is Mismagius. Mismagius has an ability. Mysterious Message says once during your turn before your attack, you may draw a card until you have 7 cards in your hand. If you drew any cards in this way, this Pokemon is knocked out. Okay, so that's solid on paper. And oh, here's Duskstone. Duskstone is an item that lets you play Mismagius even on your first turn. In expanded format, you could play Jirachi EX with Island Challenge Amulet to instantly knock it out and give your opponent 2 prize cards. You could combo this with Mismagius to put your opponent down to just 1 prize card. Then, play a card like Reset Stamp and put your opponent to a 1-card hand before their first turn. So, like Milotic, this card ended up being banned in expanded format. Also, you may have noticed that Mismagius, Duskstone, and Reset Stamp were all released during the Sun and Moon era. Thus, they were all legal in Standard at the same time. You may be wondering if this kind of combo could maybe exist in Standard, albeit to a lesser extent. Well, the answer is yes. This card would later be banned from Standard format as well as expanded. Do you know how hard it is for a card to be banned from Standard? This is like a really big deal. The last ban before this one was 5 years before with Lysander's Trump card, and the last time a Pokemon specifically was banned was in the Neo format with Sneasel and Slowking, about 20 years before this ban. In a vacuum, this card honestly isn't too crazy, but in the context of Duskstone and the Reset Stamp and all the other junk, this is probably one of the most overpowered cards ever printed. But you know, surely this was just a one-off case, right? Surely they wouldn't release another powerful self-killing card right after this one, right? Oh, hello Magneton. Magneton is another card that knocks itself out, though it was never actually banned like Mismagius. So this one must be much more tame, right? Let's see. Holo Signal says once during your turn before your attack, you may search your deck for up to 3 supporter cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. If you search your deck in this way, this Pokemon is knocked out. So this is fine, right? Adding 3 supporters to your hand isn't really that crazy when you can only play 1 supporter per turn anyway, right? And there wasn't any sort of like Duskstone equivalent, so you can't bring this card into play turn 1 either. Well, turns out the reason this card searches 3 supporters is to combo with Lieutenant Surge's strategy. Unfortunately, this might be a little too good. If you're behind on prizes, which Magneton ensures that you are, you can play 2 more supporters in addition to Lieutenant Surge. So, what are the other supporters we're using? Well, Balelba and Bryson Man lets you mill 3 cards each time it's played, so with Surge you can mill 6 in a single turn. Plus, Oranguru's Resource Management attack could put these supporters right back into your deck to do it again in the next turn. So this was I guess, a little bit too consistent and too good. So on the same day as Smagus was banned, so was Balelba and Bryson banned. Lieutenant Surge's Strategy and Oranguru were both banned and expanded, they just never got the axe in standard. While Magneton itself never actually got banned, its antics did lead to 3 other cards getting banned, so good job Magneton. In my eyes, you are broken. At this point, I think the disaster of Mismagius and Magneton led to Pokemon being a little bit scared of these types of abilities for a little while, so we wouldn't get another one until Vivid Voltage. And the one that we got is Electrode again, which is a wonderful return to form. Let's see what this does. Bazap Generator says once during your turn, if this Pokemon is on your bench, you may search your deck for up to 2 Lightning Energy cards and attach them to your Lightning Pokemon in any way you like. Then shuffle your deck. If you search your deck in this way, this Pokemon is knocked out. So this card is a callback to Electrode from base set, and just like the one from Generations, so much worse. The fact that it accelerates from deck makes it arguably worse than the one from Generation, although the fact that you can spread the energy around is kind of nice. This card isn't bad, but we're at the point where the only deck lists I can really find are meme decks from YouTube. Like, if you have a lightning attacker that needs to be charged up, this is a good option. It's just there aren't any lightning attackers you really want to charge up with this. Your best bet is probably Pikachu VMAX, which is funny, but probably just not good enough to really get anywhere. It's a bit unfortunate that that somewhat underwhelming card was the only one of its kind during the Sword and Shield era, but here we are in Scarlet and Violet, where we finally have another self-destructing card. Fortress EX from Paldea Evolved has the ability Exploding Energy, which says once during your turn, you may search your deck for up to 5 basic grass energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. Then shuffle your deck. If you search your deck this way, this Pokemon is knocked out. This one seems pretty good, right? 5 energy right from the deck. Sure, it's only grass, but it can go anywhere you want it to, and it still isn't very good. People attempted to charge up all kinds of attackers with this ability, but they never really got anywhere. Until near the end of this card's time in Standard, Mega Kangaskhan would emerge. This deck isn't necessarily good, but it's really funny, and you might be familiar with it. Fortress's ability would almost fully charge 2 Mega Kangaskhan's. Once your opponent knocks out one of those Mega Kangaskhan's, they'll have just 1 prize card remaining. That enables that last Kangaskhan to stay alive for a long time, thanks to extremely powerful comeback tools. This is a very fun deck, but the effect is strong in theory, but once again, the right cards to abuse it just never really showed up. Plus, there are honestly a lot of other ways to accelerate grass energy that don't involve giving your opponent prize cards. So, although this card is interesting, it was once again a niche pick at best. Okay, these next 2 are big ones. If you've played the game at all in the past year, you've probably been traumatized by these cards already, but Dusclops and Dusknoir from Shrouded Fable both have Cursed Blast. They knock themselves out to place 5 and 13 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, respectively. This is just crazy. Obviously, these cards are strong just to fix up your math a little bit, allow you to take KOs you wouldn't have otherwise, but especially alongside Dragapult specifically, you can very easily set yourself up to take 4, 5, or even 6 prize cards in a single turn. It's really crazy. Furthermore, the Scarlet and Violet era is filled with all sorts of really powerful comeback cards, primarily Countercatcher and Iono, so you can put 13 damage cards on your opponent's board, then you can gust up whatever you want, then you can destroy their entire hand, and then you can use your big attack and take a bunch of prize cards. This is just, it's so strong. It does so much. It's really good. I don't know what to say. Again, if you've played the game at all, you know just how crazy these cards are and how much they basically warp the game around them, to the point where we've had to release certain cards to specifically stop people from using Dusknoir, and people are still playing Dusknoir. So I don't know what to tell you. These are very, very powerful cards. Finally, there's one card left here, Magneton from Surging Sparks. Magneton is Overvolt Discharge, which says once during your turn, you may attach up to 3 basic energy cards from your discard pile to your Lightning Pokemon in any way you like. If you use this ability, this Pokemon is knocked out. So this card, I think, is pretty good. Now, this card is not overpowered or anything. It hasn't seen the success that Dusknoir has, for example, but it has seen decent success, and it's a very, very good pick for any Lightning deck that you're playing right now. Really, the reason why this card is good and, say, the Electro from Vivid Voltage is not, because, first of all, 3 is a lot higher than 2, but the other thing is there are a number of good lightning attackers that all have a heavy attack cost right now. So as a result, if you're playing a lightning deck, you're probably going to use this card as a way to power those guys up. This has led to Magneton getting a pretty solid number of competitive placements. So good job, Magneton. I'm proud of you. Still, that's everything. That was the last card. Really, I think the main takeaway here is that taking a prize card for earning a knockout really just isn't a very balanced mechanic in the first place. It allows games to snowball very quickly. So in order to make the game as a whole more enjoyable, we've had more of these comeback cards being printed, stuff like Countercatcher, stuff like Iono, and so on. Now, the issue with cards that can knock themselves out is that they enable those comeback cards even when you're not necessarily behind. And it kind of turns the tables around in the sense that you're the one who's snowballing, because you've enabled all these extremely powerful effects that you really shouldn't have, and you've set up your board or made some huge progress thanks to the fact you've knocked your own Pokemon out. So anyway, if you've sat through this whole thing, you should probably subscribe, first of all. Second of all, be sure to comment which card is your favorite and why it's Electrode EX. And third of all, I don't know. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.